Sounds
Live
great.
and live and in
Live
person.
and in person.
Live and in person.
That's right. That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah,
The real. Here's the real life.
that's right. In living
in high definition.
Yep.
Full color.
Something. All righty. As always, everybody who signs on, you know, in the beginning of this gets to watch me clicking around in Facebook. And then we get down to business. So thank you to anyone who is watching. There is our beautiful thing. I'm gonna share it to you and to me. Oh, maybe, possibly. Oh. La, 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 la.
It looks like it's happening on the page.
It is happening on the page. I just, can you click, I think you're gonna have to share it to your own page if you would like to do that. It's not letting me like share directly to, it only is letting me share to a page right now, not to individuals. Look at you, you just did it and it didn't even require me to tell you what to do because you know how to share things on Facebook, obviously. Lord. What's on your mind? Nothing is on my mind.
The fact that I don't have coffee is on my mind. We definitely need to talk about that. I'm upset for you, and I want to help you find a solution. I don't know what that's going to look like, but
yeah, it's a thing. It is a thing. Why won't this let me? All right, Lucretia, I'll tell you one thing. I shouldn't be allowed to do things.
A brave new world we're all trying to navigate.
And
I actually am just so grateful to you for being willing to to try and do and you know.
Thank you.
Be successful at it. I sometimes am literally just not willing. And I am pushing through my own barriers to willingness.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And I don't believe for a second that you aren't willing because I see all that you do. It's just, you know, it's hard. It's hard to be a person. It's hard to be a parent. It's hard to all the things. So, all right, wait a second. One last thing, I just have to do the weekly Zoom Facebook surgery. There we go. Now I can see the comments on the live, but not us delayed. Right. And I can actually look at you and have a conversation with you. All right, my darling people. I even wrote stuff down.
That's exciting. I could not.
Well,
reliant on you to lead and guide.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point. I am happy to do that. I can't promise that I do it well, but I am happy to do it. It is always an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to get to spend this time with you. Sadly, it is the only time that we get to spend together right now.
Yeah.
Because of the, you know, sort of nature of our lives, but I very much appreciate it. So we're just gonna get started. Welcome, friends and family, to yet another Saturday morning coffee and conversation. This week, I am joined once again by my amazing co-host, monthly co-host, Lucretia Marie Anderson. Lucretia is a coach, a theater artist, and an educator. She is an anti-racist parenting educator, a parent herself, an activist, and a brave truth teller. In the description of this event on the live, you can see more information about Lucretia and about where to find all of the amazing things that they are doing at this moment. Not the least of which is a brand new book that just came out within the last week or so.
Now the time.
That we will be talking about. There is a link, Raising the Global Mindset. Before we jump into our conversation today, I just want to say the words around what is inspiring these Saturday conversations to happen so consistently. I decided at the end of last year that the scheduling of the podcast was taking up more time than the actual doing of the podcast. And it was a barrier to actually being able to have what I consider to be, important and valuable conversations in my life. So I picked a time that I knew could always work for me and put out the call to folks in my life that I admire and that I think are remarkable. So these conversations are being had with members of the If You Could See Me family. And that includes, participants past, present, and future in the project itself, but that also includes professionals and peers and other individuals doing, this same type of work in their own way to change the conversation around mental health, eliminate stigma, and take shame off the table. The big question that I want to be asking myself, and I want to be asking all of us right now, is what if shame was no longer an option? What if we chose to not accept it as the truth? What if we chose to rebel against its use as a tool for control, both of ourselves and of other people? So that's what I mean by taking shame off the table. In the negotiation of my life, shame is no longer an option. And I am inviting all of you every week to engage in this conversation. And I, as always, am just so excited to invite my friend Lucretia here to be with me. How are you? Tell us about all the amazing things that are happening in your life. Tell us about your new book. And then we'll get into the real conversation about shame and apologies and accountability and growing and helping one another to grow. Yeah. I'm done talking now.
For now. I'm well. Thank you for asking. It's been an interesting week. I had my first shot of the COVID vaccine on Wednesday. Feeling very lucky to have it at this point. And so this week in particular just been kind of really weird with some of the fatigue, and then also that same day the book, which I'll talk about in a second, arrived in the mail for me. And then also that same morning, we heard the news about those 8 people being killed, largely Asian Americans, in Atlanta. And so it's just been a really interesting and wonky and introspective and celebratory and sad and, week for me. That being said, what is happening is yes. So my good friend Aditi curated a collection of parenting essays by global leaders, parents from around the world, largely women, about empowering our children against, against racism, against, this idea that we are, individualistically minded people, and, really trying to raise the idea of how we can be, understand each other with compassion, and explore our interconnectedness, right? And so we're really excited about the release of Raising the Global Mindset. I've written 2 chapters, one on privilege and the other on exploring the world with your children, whether you can actually do that by going abroad or not. How do you cultivate multiculturalism, in your own life, and, again, have a better shared understanding of other people and their culture and heritage, and what they're about. And it's, obviously, like, it just couldn't be more timely, right? In fact, again, the day after, my COVID kind of fatigue swept over me.
It is real.
It is very real. I penned this whole speech about, why it's so relevant right now, and what's happening exactly, specifically with the, Stop Asian Hate campaign, and why, books like these are so important in conversations that hopefully books like this will produce, not only amongst ourselves as adults, but again, having these difficult conversations with children, why it's so important. And, it was a very passionate plea to not be afraid to have these conversations, and not only not be afraid, but to be intentional about doing it, and not just kind of sitting back and going, wow, yeah, the world sucks. And, I really wish my children could move into a space where they'll be and grow up in a better world, and then click on Netflix and keep it moving. It's we have to do something.
Action is required.
Action, right? Exactly. If you want to change things, you have to be actively trying to change yourself. But we have a difficult time with that. So anyway, I think that having not fully read through all of these essays yet, because again, just got my hands on my first copy, already I'm just super intrigued by the stories and the narratives that I've been reading in these essays around, immigrants and expats, and, people who are, have been moved around because of, perhaps they're in the military, but then also the diaspora of culture that we have in this book, or the representation of culture that we have in this book, is just, it's amazing. And so I'm really excited about it and hope that people grab a copy. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And yeah, that's what I've been doing, is promoting this book. Doing some other writing, have a couple of articles coming out for Richmond Family Magazine soon, and doing some devising work, theater work with students around social justice, and pushing and building this this coaching business. So I'm just really grateful for for all the things.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. You're killing it. It's so incredible. And I'm so excited for you. And I will be ordering my copy of that book today.
Write a review, please. If you order a copy of the book, please go to Amazon, write us a review.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Please do that. Please support this amazing work, this amazing human. Yeah, it has been an interesting week or so. I was telling you right before we went live that I am, after I got COVID in December, I had a significant increase in my anxiety, and my heart racing all the time, and but a lot of different things were happening. I was starting in a new, professional role, and I was doing all of these things. And I just put my head down and just did it, and didn't pay attention, because that's what I do. I sort of disconnect from my body for as long as I possibly can, so that I can push through what needs to be done. But, I went back to sort of working in a full-time capacity in I don't know, the first 10 days of January after having had COVID, and just noticed that it was like my heart was racing all the time, and my anxiety was really high, and I have developed a resistance to caffeine. You know, after like trying to figure out what was going on, and you know, I live off coffee, like legit live all day, drink it all day. You
Do you
know,
mean that your body was having a reaction to the caffeine, or
yeah.
just not being affected by it at all?
No, my body was like reacting, like I would get, my heart would race. So, I mean, like just perpetual chest pains, feeling like I'm having a heart attack. But here's the thing, I am highly anxious. So I always feel that way to some degree.
Right.
And so it just sort of like kept getting heightened and heightened and heightened and heightened. And then I, you know, I just ignored it for quite a while. And then the last, like, I don't know, 3 weeks has just been like, oh, every time I have my morning cup of coffee, which is literally like a religious experience. It is like I get up in the morning long before everyone else to have my time to drink my coffee and to, you know, meditate, or sometimes just to watch television in silence and, you know, just veg for a few minutes before I, you know, go into my day.
Right.
And it just has become so obvious that this, you know, sort of shoots up, you know, after I drink the coffee. So I split the caffeine intake in half and started doing half caf, like, I don't know, in the last month or so. And that's not working. And so in the last like 4 days, I'm doing like this, like literally a tablespoon of regular coffee in the pot of decaf. And it's still too much caffeine. It's still like so, and yet, while my heart and my body says it's too much caffeine, my brain is like, woman, what have you done to us? What is happening? So, that is just very real. And it is also, yes, Denise is joining us on Facebook, and too much caffeine is definitely not healthy. You are right. But at this point, it's just any caffeine at all is too much caffeine. And, you know, but, you know, the reason that I'm talking about this is not, woe is me, my caffeine situation is so sad, but it is the reality that I was not listening to my body. I was ignoring it. I was underplaying what was happening. I was saying, oh, well, you're just anxious and that's just, you know, your lot in life. It's not a big deal. It's not, you know, it's like, I just was, and this whole thing, you know, with the sort of, it's almost like a form of dissociation where I just like separate myself from my body and I do what needs to be done until my body decides, you know, darling,
shut it down.
You will end up unconscious on the floor if you do not stop. And so that is something that happens, that my body does to me periodically. So, you know, I felt like I wanted to talk about that just briefly because I do think that we as caretakers, caregivers, you know, breadwinners, earners in our families often really don't pay attention. And we really just put aside our own needs and our own, you know, the messages that are coming up in our minds because, you know, it's just like, whatever, I just have to get it done. And I don't want to perpetuate that. I don't want my children to see that. And I want to be better for myself.
Yeah.
So.
It makes so much sense. I mean, we will do just about anything to ignore all the signs, right?
Yep.
To push ourselves to the limit, and refuse to just embody, like, to sit in our bodies and understand what's happening to us somatically, and listen to the wisdom of the body, right? And take the breath, and actually, not just be introspective, around, okay, why is this happening, but just allowing ourselves to really feel what's happening. It seems like it's simpler to completely ignore the sensations because we don't have time, right? We've got other things to be focused on.
Right.
And of course, the exact opposite is true as far as productivity, right? When we completely continue to ignore what's going on in our bodies, and we don't take time for ourselves, and we don't nurture, we can't move forward anymore.
Yep.
Our bodies are going to reject that, and it's going to manifest in all kinds of different ways.
Yep.
So I'm good. I'm proud on you for recognizing and allowing and accepting. I think acceptance, right, is the biggest piece of this.
Yeah.
I don't want to accept this. This is not.
I really, legit, really don't want to accept this. I really don't.
I know.
And I think that, at least I can see the sort of like my body is learning how to be alive without caffeine.
Yeah.
And so, thank you for being here with me anyway.
Well, and that transitional period. Yeah, of course.
Like,
and what the worst part is the transitional period, right? Of just kind of like, oh, all right, something else to get used to.
Well, it's really funny because like 4 years ago, the meds that I was taking started to affect my thyroid. And it was the greatest med experience of my life. And it was like the way, antidepressants are supposed to work. Mm-hmm. Like everything you would ever dream to happen, happened, and it was beautiful. Yeah. And then it started affecting the rest of my body, and I had to stop taking them. Mm-hmm. And the exact same thing is happening right now. Like the thing that I was using to help me, manage and juggle and be all that I can be is now no longer serving me. And so I've got to learn a different, find a different tool. And ultimately, I think that the message the universe is sending me is that these external tools can't be the tools. Right. So it's got to come from inside, and it may require some, adjustment of expectations and lifestyle and all of that stuff.
So you're working towards is it a mindfulness certification?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am doing 100-hour, I'm trying to turn up my volume, but I don't think it's going to work. 100-hour mindfulness teacher certification. And that's helping, but it also, doing the work for yourself also brings up all the stuff that you've been avoiding.
Absolutely.
So,
it's a lot. Because once the lid comes off of that container.
Right.
As I was finishing up my my life and energetic healing certification at the end of last year, I thought it was just like this roller coaster ride of just, all of the things, all the emotions, all the feelings, all the stuff coming up, and learning how to kind of shield myself, because I'm now becoming and being a container for other people, right? As all of their stuff's coming out. Mm-hmm. It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, working as a therapist, there's a lot of that anyway. And then it just, it's sort of like a different piece. So yeah, it's the real work of like becoming a container or a pass through for, people's pain and energy, and, and finding a way to hold on to what serves us, and then, let go of the rest.
Right. Absolutely.
And be healthy in the process. So, Yeah, this growth thing
Growth thing.
is hard, constantly being in a position of wanting to, know more and be better and be more aware. And, and that's ultimately what this conversation today is about, is like, so I think that I made you aware of this, but I'll let our audience know that, back in January, when I was hosting the show, the If You Could See Me show, I referred to my audience as ladies and gentlemen.
Mm.
And immediately knew that was not okay. That was inappropriate. And had this whole war happening inside my mind. What the fuck do I do? How do I can't, should I stop the whole show and say, I realize, and just freaking out all the while,
Well, let's unpack that for a second. Okay,
Totally.
so that is the traditional greeting of an audience for a show.
Yes.
Why are you having this internal conflict around why it was not okay in that moment? Making sure that everyone understands, right? We don't know who's watching, and
I love it. No, that's beautiful. Thank you. Why? Because it is not inclusive of the gender spectrum. Because it excludes people. And, if you want to know a little bit more about my sort of, process through this, I did write a piece the next day that's on the If You Could See Me blog. If anybody is interested, I'll be happy to share a link. But yeah, it was just immediately like, I am creating a space that I have charged myself with making as inclusive as possible.
Right.
I've done a ton of anti-bias training and, understanding that, there are correct ways to use inclusive language. Mm-hmm. I hope other people learn these skills. And yet there was that, I've been hosting events for a very long time. That's my, it's just baseline. You don't even think about it. It just happens. And then there's that moment where you go, I know that was wrong. And then you go, maybe nobody heard it. Do I want to, maybe the 100 people that I was talking to like this just didn't hear me. They just missed it. Maybe
and some of them may not have actually, right? Like, because we're so used to hearing that, they didn't really hear it.
They didn't. Yeah. Many people didn't, and a couple of people did. And somebody wrote it in the chat, and I didn't see it in the chat because I wasn't monitoring the chat. But then a survey came back that night and said, that wasn't very inclusive. And I was like, well, it didn't go unnoticed. And if I want to be the person that I say I want to be, I have to address this. I have to at least try to make it right. Yeah. Because nobody owes me anything. My good intentions are useless.
Squat.
Right. What?
Yeah, just squat. Like, it doesn't.
Right, exactly. My good intentions mean nothing if I'm not willing to back it.
Impact, right.
So then I did have a conversation with somebody, and an activist, but another white woman, about apologizing in general, and and I said, I just really want to have a broader conversation about this. I want to open it up and say, like, I messed up in that moment, and shame, the theme of the day, shame causes us to like dig in or shrink away or make excuses. And I don't want to do that. Right. Because I think one of the biggest things that we have noticed, over the last year, especially, since George Floyd and protests, and we're really having an open conversation about anti-racism, although this, is a conversation that goes very, very broadly. what we are finding is that people don't know how to apologize. People avoid these conversations because they are afraid of accountability being shameful, right? And being, feeling embarrassed and humiliated and, and all of that. And then people who are, represent marginalized, identities often feel afraid to make a point and say, that hurt me, or I'm offended by that, or that didn't feel good. And so here we are.
Right. My response to that?
I don't know. I mean, dude, excuse me. Now's another one, dude. Hey, dude, all the time.
Hey,
I just do it.
I'll take dude.
And I will talk forever.
No, I just want to make sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's absolutely legitimate one to have that that response, the reaction that you had, right? Around, okay, so I've made the mistake. Do I pause what's happening right now and acknowledge it? That I have put my foot in my mouth, or completely inadvertently was exclusive in my language. Or do I just ignore, try to move past, and maybe apologize later? But what I will say is that the acknowledgement and having the awareness, right, of the misstep is huge. And it shows, that you are putting forth the effort to grow and to learn and to do better. I think it's really important that we give ourselves the grace to do that, right? And then ask for forgiveness of the folks who we've offended, So there are a number of times, I use non-binary pronouns, and quite regularly in conversation, there are folks who, more and more folks are acknowledging that, and they want to make sure that they are inclusive in their language when they are speaking of me and addressing me, and but they mess up. And then also when I am doing the same for other people, I mess up, right? It has taken us years and years and years to learn the language of exclusion. It's going to take us some time to understand, learn, and use the language of inclusion. And I think that most people understand that, right? Most people along the spectrum understand that it is about, and again, while your intention doesn't, necessarily, mean a whole lot unless you are willing to accept and understand, where the mistake happened and why it was incorrect. I think that just having the awareness and the acknowledgement of that goes a long way. I mentioned earlier that I've been working with an all-girls school up in Maryland, and we've been working on this project that is a devised theater piece around social justice. And one of the students there is non-binary. And there was a moment where the other co-teacher kept misgendering on accident, knows fully how the student feels and how they're identifying and all of that. But, it was just the tape, in her head. And so, at some point, and that student, even though we're trying to empower voices as much as possible, shrunk away from just saying, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's happening. And so another student kind of stepped in. But anyway, what ended up happening is an open conversation, right, where the teacher acknowledged, okay, I made this mistake. I am trying to do better. Please continue to hold me accountable, and let's continue to move forward, right? It happens. And especially as we continue just to learn from young people across the spectrum, it's fascinating how language evolves, how the way that we see ourselves and identify ourselves evolve. And not necessarily like the identification itself evolves, but like having the tools, the language, the empowerment to say, wow, okay, this is what's really going on, and this is my preference at this point, is intriguing, and we need to accept it if we're going to be a part of a society that is continually evolving, right? To be more inclusive. So yeah, I do. I think it's important, but I think, you know, there are people who will just say outright, listen, I don't want to change. I'm not going to change. And that's when it's hurtful, right? I don't want to change because it's something new that I have to learn, and I refuse to, you know, accept that. And, you know, an old dog can learn new tricks.
Or I got this week when talking about something that was inadvertently anti-Semitic.
Mm.
There are people that are having real problems.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And I'm just tired of all of this division.
Mm. Right. It's divisive when you start to voice and speak up against oppression. Divisive, right? It's no longer part of the status quo. You're inviting me
right.
to not continue to
right. Exactly.
And in you know, in the way I interact as part of the status quo. Yes, right. Yes, I am.
Yes, I am. Right. And I'm not going to apologize for it. And I'm sorry that you don't see it, but that I will not apologize for.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's complicated and hurtful.
It's not really that complicated though, Erin.
You're right.
I think people complicate it.
Yeah.
I'm speaking my truth. This is how I relate to what you said and what is happening
right.
to me. I need you to hear and understand that. And I need you to be willing to take that in, to process it, and acknowledge, okay, there's a different perspective here, and I have caused some hurt, right? We get so defensive, especially when we are kind, we're nice people who are well-intentioned, and we would never hurt anyone, you know, and have empathy and compassion for all. Okay, when we mess up and we've hurt someone, it's hard to acknowledge that.
Yes.
Because then the devise that I am this good and honorable person all of the time, it's
challenged.
Right, it's challenged.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
You can still be a good and honorable person and also make mistakes.
Well, yes, right? Like, yes, because none of us are, unflawed. And that's why this becomes why it gets so painful, or why it's so, it feels so confusing to have a person say, no, your perspective is wrong, right? Because it's like, but if you make a mistake at work, I assume you take responsibility for it, but a lot of people don't. So, we live in a world where shame has been used so effectively that none of us can take criticism of any kind, right? No one can stand to be held accountable by by anybody, much less, what if this was my friend? What if this person, said something, or I said something that hurt someone, and they are my friend, and they say, gosh, no. How do you say, no, it wasn't hurtful? This is a really kind of basic conversation about that, but, how
we have to get down to basics. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have to get down to basics because it's very basic.
It is very basic. It's just basic human decency. Like, if I do something that hurts your feelings, I value our relationship enough to get my own emotions under control and take responsibility for what I may have done that was hurtful. And to imagine that there's a world in which I could make a different choice next time. And that doesn't always come across for people.
Not only make a different choice this time, but even, you know, accepting that, you know, in this moment, right, I can do my best to make it right by trying to understand, by listening, and by, you know, apologizing.
Right.
And also that person doesn't have to accept it
right
in that moment, right? They may need time and space to process, and being able to give that time and space to folks, I think is really important piece of this as well. You know, it's important for, you know, again, the idea of misgendering around identity. It's important for acknowledging microaggressions of any kind, you know, because again, I think with microaggressions, they're so subtle, and oftentimes, you know, they are modeled after things that we've been learning for years and years and years, and, you know, things we hear from our families and our parents and see in the media, and, you know, no one has acknowledged that it's not okay to say or do these things until this moment where someone actually stands up and pauses, which takes a lot to do. Okay, because you have to be strong enough and acknowledge your own hurt around it, and, you know, be willing to rock the boat around, you know, the whatever's happening in that relationship dynamic, to say that was a misstep, right, it was hurtful to me. And whether you choose to, you know, change your behavior in the future or not, I need to acknowledge this for myself, and I need for you to acknowledge it, so hopefully you will change your behavior in the future. It takes a lot. I'm, you know, 43 years old. I can only count on my hand, you know, just a few times where I've actually stood my ground and said, this was hurtful to me, and here's why. And so, you know, when someone actually acknowledges that with you, it is the onus on us to, wow, really take that in, and not put up that defense mechanism automatically. We're going to do it, you know, because it just kicks in. It's whoa, you know, it's almost, it can be paralyzing. The idea that, again, you wronged someone or you're being called out for something, right? And so when someone actually does do the calling out or calling in, right, they're really going to just kind of like say, listen, this is not because I don't value our relationship. This is because I do want us to have a continue to have a relationship, you know, whether that's at work or, you know, socially or whatever. I want us to continue to have this relationship. I can't do that if this is, you know, and let this sit, not in a way that's going to feel good to me. So I need you to understand and acknowledge this hurt. And so it takes a lot to do that. So the onus on you, if you value that relationship as well, to say, okay, I hear that. And even if you can't really process it, you know, and understand it in that moment, take the time to do that, right? And have patience all around with yourself to have a better understanding so that you can do better in the future.
It's so much about valuing the relationship, right? Like having this sense of honoring the experience of another human being. And if I say I care about you, or you say you care about me, then at the very least, we should honor the experiences of one another. But we are so, it's just, it goes back to like what I was talking about before with the coffee and the meds and the, you know, and a similar conversation that we had in one of the Restory community groups last week, that we are all on autopilot so much of the time that it can be so jarring to be shaken from your malaise or your like, just go, go, go. This is how I do things. This is what the world is. That, you know, I mean, I want to hold people accountable. I also want to sort of recognize and hold space for the reality that challenging people to think in a completely different way is really overwhelming, right? And scary. And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be expected to do it, that we all shouldn't be expected to grow in this moment. And there can be a tiny bit of compassion for the reality of understanding that patriarchy and racism and misogyny and, you know, homophobia and all of that is the water that we all swim in.
Mm-hmm.
And people are sort of coming to understand and accept and realize, you know, it's a spectrum, and everybody's sort of reaching in different places and in different ways. And, you know, I feel like I need to say that. I also feel like sometimes when you acknowledge that, it feels like you're making excuses for people, and that's not what I'm doing, because I don't believe there is an excuse for that sort of, you know, unwillingness to evolve,
yeah.
Right? But there is, you know, a necessary sort of awareness and understanding that we have to have. And that's why when you talk about calling people in, you know, that sort of conceptually makes a lot more sense, because you're welcoming people into a broader conversation. You're not pushing them away. Shania just said on Facebook, in cancel culture, where someone might make a mistake, they can get dragged before even having the opportunity to be accountable.
Right.
How can we give people permission and comfort to come correct in their moment of growth? Yeah. Especially if we are all learning and growing and working together. If that makes sense, it makes 100% of sense. Shania, you said it way better than I did. No, it's true. And I do think, you know, this is what I tell my children. I don't know if, you know, you have similar conversations, because our kids are similar ages, but, you know, when we talk about cancel culture and, you know, and the sort of breadth of that, I feel like it's become sort of a really sort of toxic concept.
Oh, absolutely.
Because what it's intended to do is, you know, broaden a conversation and hold people accountable, and recognize that people have been allowed to, you know, white people in particular, people with a lot of money, have been allowed to get away with, you know, immense amounts of abuse for generations. And so calling people out, holding people accountable is valuable. But you're absolutely right, Shania. Like, if you shut somebody down and shut them out before you give them the opportunity to even really hear you or listen or grow, then it's a missed opportunity.
Absolutely. They don't get the chance to one, redeem themselves, which again, some folks may say you've had, you know, years to redeem yourself. You've had centuries to redeem yourself. You know, you don't get that. You don't get that moment or that opportunity. And I think that's wrong. You know, I think, you know, calling someone in, and it is, I think it's also the way in which you present it, right? So I was thinking about, it's funny, I was thinking about the idea of cancel culture like yesterday, and I was thinking about, you know, what happened with Sharon Osbourne on, not The View, the talk, whatever show she's on with the panel of women. You're like, I don't know that. So Sharon Osbourne came to the defense of, I'm gonna forget his name, Piers Morgan. Yeah, that guy.
Piers Morgan,
right? You know, her friend, because
does not require defending,
not to be a racist, and she, you know, and she was called out about it, you know, on national television, and of course, immediately that defense mechanism like kicks in. and she starts yelling at this Black woman, you know, which is just like, now everyone's like, ah, you know, like, and it just, it blows up, and she does, you know, end up apologizing and, you know, trying to make amends, and by acknowledging that one, she was, she felt attacked. And when we feel attacked and put on the spot, you know, our immediate reaction is, you know, you're wrong. That's not right. You don't know me. You don't know, you know, you're misinterpreting everything I'm saying and said and done over the last, you know, and it's tempting to just say, sup, see, there it is. Done. You're done. You're canceled. It's over. When the reality is that people need time and space to understand, again, the hurt and the harm. And then if they don't take that opportunity and they don't, you know, do something, right, to hold themselves accountable and to make it right, then it's an opportunity to say, okay, well, listen, that's not someone who I can continue to support, right? Because they're not making any sort of effort. They can't even hear, you know, what is, but again, really hard to hear when someone, think about any interaction or argument, right, that you're having with someone. I can't hear you if you are automatically just attacking me.
Right.
And there was something else that you said earlier that that I thought is really important to lift up as well, was, you know, that it really is about honoring the experiences, which is, again, the whole thing with the royal family and Meghan coming out and blah, 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 blah. It's like, you know, the Pierce guy, like, is not going to honor the experience of what, you know, this Black woman says she went through, is in complete denial about the fact that that could happen.
Right.
So, you know, in honoring the experiences of one another, we cannot do that unless we understand that there are different perspectives from our own. Which is, right?
Which is a pretty basic thing to sort of,
basic, but incredibly and more and increasingly harder to do when we're all in our own echo chambers.
Yes.
When everything about our lives is customized.
Yes.
From Netflix telling me what I'm going to enjoy watching,
right,
to social media curating exactly what my experience is going to be there, who I'm going to see, who I'm going to interact with, unless I'm intentional about saying, no, I want to see diverse perspectives. I want to understand. I am going to trick the algorithm into showing me different people and different ads and different, right? Like, you know, if you don't do that, you don't have an opportunity at all to understand that there is a different perspective. There are many different perspectives, and none of yours doesn't get to be the only right one.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. And
and again, saying that feels like so rudimentary. But it's right.
It's how we live in a civilized society.
It's how you live
like,
in a civilized society.
It's how you be a part of a world that exists with other people in it. It's the thing.
You don't want to. You don't have to, but then you don't have to, right? I could sit in my homogenous community,
totally,
in my house.
Right. And you can choose to do that.
It's a choice.
That's right. You can absolutely choose to do it. No, a lot of the stuff in general that we talk about in If You Could See Me, and the concept in and of itself, to me, seems so basic that sometimes I'm like, why is this special? Like, what is it about this and these conversations and this platform that is meaningful to people? Because in my mind, this is just the way the world is supposed to be. We're supposed to do these things for each other. We're supposed to, you know, want to know one another's stories. We're supposed to create space for, you know, a fuller representation of the world. And we're supposed to apologize when we hurt one another's feelings.
It's basic kindergarten rules.
Right? So Shania also said, but we are also responsible for using inclusive language that is not an attack, because sometimes it is in the heat of feelings. It's true. And Shania, I wish you were here so that you could expand on that. If you wanna type some more in the chat. You know, I love that, because I also feel like, you know, there is a line, right? We don't get to be offensive and hurtful to one another just because we feel attacked, right? That it's like, you know, when you're in war, there are still rules of engagement, right? There are still, you know, when you're fighting with a person in a physical fight, you know, there are just still certain things that you don't do.
Yeah.
And I mean, unless your ultimate goal is not to have an honorable, you know, give and take, but to hurt the other person. And if that is your intention, then there's nothing that I can do.
Nothing you can say or do that's
right.
going to change that.
You just want to be hurtful.
Yeah.
You are angry and you want me to be the vessel that you pour your anger into.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so at that point, you're not coming to the table with the same goal. And so it's
or the same, and I think honestly, Erin, the same tools of how to just kind of process things that are coming at you as a human being, right? I mean, I think this is why, again, you know, the idea of embodiment and the idea of mindfulness, right? Like it comes into play, because when we are triggered, you know, when you're someone who is actively practicing how to process things through your body and processing your emotions through your body and how that shows up so that you can become less reactive. Mindfulness gives you that gap in between reacting to whatever the trigger is, right? And until you learn how to do that, you are going to be in defense mode. You are going to be in attack mode. You know, with that is just how, you know, that is unfortunately a very human.
Yes.
Right.
I'm so glad you brought up mindfulness in this conversation, because it's true. It's the only thing that has ever helped me to know how to respond rather than react.
Yeah. And
to slow down and to you know, be in that gap between the feeling and the action. So Shania said, I think it's about how we address.
She's got a lot to say this morning.
She does, and I love it. I think it's about how we address the mistake. But when we engage, when we attempt to hold folks accountable, we have to be committed to language that empowers and helps the person to hear their mistake. I'm speaking from the perspective of a person who was impacted by the mistake. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. I think that we have a responsibility. And, you know, conversely, can I conversely state that there's only so many times a person should be expected to have this conversation.
Absolutely. I'm not responsible for continuing to educate you on why you are being hurtful to me.
Right. Right. And if, you know, one of the things that we say in our family is, you know, when someone does something and they apologize for it, we say, I don't want you to apologize. I want you to make a different choice in the future.
Correct.
Right. I just don't want you to do it anymore. If you're apologizing to me for the 5th or 10th time for something that continues to happen, at some point, your apology means literally nothing to me.
It means nothing. Thank you. Can you repeat? I'm going to make sure I share this segment with the people in my household who I continue to have this conversation with, but maybe a little less eloquently than what you just stated. Because it's
you know, I don't want you to say you're sorry. I just don't want it to happen anymore.
Just stop doing it.
Stop doing it. And, you know, and that's it. And so, you know, while I appreciate and honor the, you know, the desire to want to respect people's growth and to provide space for people to feel comfortable, at some point, it becomes, you know, you have to make a decision. Like, am I going to continue to engage in this way with you, or am I going to, you know, sever this part of my relationship with you? You can't do that with your children necessarily.
I mean, oh, right, we can't.
Not now. I mean, I guess in the future you're making that decision for yourself.
They gotta make it. They gotta make it out of here.
Do require raising, and by law we have to, we have to do that.
But it goes back to, again, do you value the relationship, right? Do you value the social relationship? Do you value the work relationship, right? If you are a leader, you're my supervisor, you're my head, and I'm beneath you on the corporate ladder. Do you value me as a constituent, as an employee, as a colleague, as a whatever the relationship is? And if you don't value me, then I'm going to be disgruntled, angry, sad, hurt, moving on to someplace. It's where's the value here? So.
Right. No, and so I think that too. I don't want to wrap up, but we have to, because
we need to, because I need to do a little shoe shopping after.
This is I've already, I have to take my daughter to at least 3 thrift stores today. So she doesn't leave the house ever, except like once a month to go to a thrift store. And so I have made this promise.
You have to honor that, and
I value my relationship with my daughter. I value what she requests of the world. And I also value the fact that all of my children have been incredibly patient throughout this COVID nightmare of a year of not being able to access the world. And so, yes, so thrift stores and shoe shopping today. What I think, like encapsulating the conversation today is really about like renewing our mutual respect for one another, adopting whatever tools we need to as individuals to better stomach being held accountable, right? To be able, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's medication, whether it's, therapy, whether it's, joining an affinity group. You have a multi-month, Wednesday night meeting for parents, for anti-racist parenting, where you hold space for, sort of unpacking this stuff and learning how to be, present as a parent in a different way, and learning how to embody these ideals and these values, while also learning how to figure out what you think. Because if you're a white person who's never really been challenged to think about this stuff, you're also unpacking, how have I been socialized, and what do I think, and what am I doing? So, finding those spaces to be able to hear people's points of view and decide how you're going to respond. Number one is, in my mind, is no shame. Back to our theme, no shame and healthy boundaries. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to shame you if you hurt me, but I am going to let you know that your hurt is not acceptable to me. And if we can't come to some sort of mutual agreement on how this, relationship continues, then the relationship will end. And so that's terrifying. Like you said before, it's really friggin' scary to stand up for yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for, this conversation. Thank you for acknowledging the conversations that, I'm having with parents around, again, being more inclusive. It's also, this is just an enormous opportunity for all of us to heal from, again, the way we've been socialized, from our racial conditioning, from our conditioning around gender, from all of these things, and to just gain a better understanding, an acceptance of where we are, and hopefully the determination and the commitment to move forward and to move past. We will fail.
Yes.
As a
society, we will fail.
We will fail ourselves. We will fail our children. We will fail the generations behind us as a society if we are not willing to step up to the plate and acknowledge the hurts and acknowledge what we can do as individuals to make a greater impact.
And we will also make mistakes.
And we will make mistakes, and that's okay, right? You've got to get the ego out of the way. In fact, my church community, has a saying, ego stands for edging God out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to take it one level further, especially if you're, non-religious or, from a secular community, just edging grace out. We're not able to give ourselves the grace to acknowledge that we will make mistakes. We can continue to learn from them and continue to grow and continue to challenge ourselves to do that. That's the goal for me. What is life? What is the evolution of life if you're not willing to accept that you are going to make mistakes and that's okay, and do better next time.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding that this is nuanced, and it's work, it's practice, it's showing up. It's not, it does not fit neatly into, like I was saying before, into that that autopilot that we all like to operate in.
It's comfortable. We've again socialized to believe that we're just supposed to be comfortable.
Right. All the time. Right. And so discomfort is agonizing. And so I so appreciate you always being willing to show up here and to talk about uncomfortable things and to create space for, safe, brave, revealing of self and revealing of growth. And, it just is such a gift to have you always. And thank you.
Thank you for creating the space. Always. Am I connecting? I have a hard time looking at myself on the screen, making things happen right. Thank you.
Friends, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday morning with us once again. And we will see you next week.